With global demand for natural resources increasing year on year, some of the world's poorest communities are fighting hard to protect their environment. When protests and direct action don't work, many will try and get redress through the courts. But when multinational companies decide the costs of settling such cases are far less than the huge profits on offer, is justice being undermined? People and Power has been to Peru to find out.
High up in the Andes of northern Peru, amongst cloud forests, high moors and fertile lands, lies the town of Huancabamba and the nearby farming community of Segunda y Cajas. Untouched by modern industry, the local population lives almost exclusively through farming, tapping into the rich soils and fresh water sources to put food on the table and sell produce to lowland cities. In 2002, this community's way of life, more or less unchanged for hundreds of years, was to be shattered by the arrival of British mining company Monterrico Metals. A London-based enterprise, Monterrico obtained concessions from the Peruvian government to start exploration work for the Rio Blanco mine, a large open-pit copper mine which would be in operation for 20 years. In 2005, local communities marched on the mine site in protest against the company's plans. The march was violently put down by the police, who detained and tortured 28 protesters for 3 days. Unlikely to get any redress in Peru, the victims sued Monterrico in the UK, alleging that the company had been complicit in the affair. But though their prospects looked good, the case was settled by Monterrico last year before it came to trial. It meant the victims did get some compensation, but the wider problems that they were fighting to reveal were never aired in open court. This begs a disturbing question. If corporations will do anything to avoid going near a court, how can indigenous peoples ever assert their rights?
Simplemente queremos que el Proyecto Río Blanco se retire de acá de nuestras tierras, del Carmen en la frontera de Huancabamba. Tan solo por ellos están viendo estas muertes terribles, como salvajes nos tratan.
We wanted to understand the story behind the Monterrico case, to find out what had driven a Peruvian farming community to take a foreign mining company to court, and whether or not justice had really been served by the settlement. In Peru, we got to know 3 community leaders from the countryside near the town of Huancabamba, who had been taking part in the protests against Monterrico since the company's arrival, and whose lives had been radically changed by the ensuing conflict. Pedro Aponte, the president of the local Environmental Defense League, explained the importance of the land for his livelihood.
Nosotros acá vivimos en un campo libre. Por eso es de que defendemos nosotros la superficie, las aguas, porque mayormente pues nos da mucho fruto. De esto vivimos nosotros en el campo. La actividad minera debe de darse donde no hay que afecte, donde no haya agricultura, no haya ganadería, no haya agua dulce, ahí puede darse, pero acá es de más, todo está ocupado.
The story begins in 2003, when Monterrico gained complete control of the Rio Blanco mining concessions through their Peruvian subsidiary, Minera Majaz. Community relations got off to a bad start when the local population accused Monterrico of starting exploration work without proper consultation. Monterrico then started a media campaign on local radio to gain support for the mine.
A esta hora en comunicación con el señor Andreu Bristow, gerente de operaciones de la empresa minera Majaz. Señor Andreu Bristow, buenas tardes, de Piura.
Muy buenas tardes.
Por ejemplo, su estrategia para lograr un mayor acercamiento con las comunidades.
Queremos un desarrollo compartido, queremos un desarrollo completo de la zona, no solamente en el lado de minería, pero queremos apoyar el desarrollo de la agricultura también en la zona.
Servando Aponte has been the president of his community for the majority of the time Monterrico has been active in the region. To help us understand his community's anxiety about the Rio Blanco project, he took us to see the Yanacocha gold mine, the largest in Latin America, to hear from locals about its effects on the environment.
Como pueden observar, estamos a la entrada de la empresa minera Yanacocha. Hay un sinfín de casitas de gente agricultora y ganadera que se encuentra pasteando sus ovejas en este instante y que día a día conviven con la actividad minera, ¿no?
¿Y qué ventajas ha dejado la mina?
La única ventaja que ha dejado es contaminación. Vamos a salir más arriba y vamos a ver los pozos cómo están irando.
Que no he tenido estudio, a veces por lo que mis padres no han tenido recursos para hacernos estudiar, pero digo, ya por mina ojalá mis hijos estudien y sean otras personas ya que tengan su trabajo, siquiera dónde mantenerse, pero no fue así, solamente nos engañaron. Terminan, llevan la plata, toda la riqueza de acá y se van. Nosotros quedaremos jodidos. Cajamarca, como me dijo un ingeniero una vez, Cajamarca no va a quedar Cajamarca, va a quedar un infierno. Ahí está firmando. Observando esta gran destrucción que han hecho aquí en Yanacocha, la ha hecho la Yanacocha, en nuestra comunidad va a ser más peor. Nos van a dar una sentencia de miseria, enfermedad y muerte lenta. No me equivoco, estoy seguro. De darse una explotación minera, terminaríamos muriendo a pocos.
¡Viva las rondas campesinas! ¡Abajo la mina!
A protest march was organised in June 2004 to force a dialogue over Monterrico's plans for the mine. The protesters claimed that after waiting for over 24 hours for government and company officials to arrive, they were suddenly attacked by a large police contingent. Eyewitnesses say that in the ensuing chaos, a protester, Reimberto Racho, was killed when a tear gas canister hit him in the head. However, the official police report said that Reimberto Racho was drunk and fell down a hill. We were told by many people that the police in the area, instead of being an impartial force to keep the peace, were defending Monterrico's interests over the communities.
Dado que no cuentan con un marco normativo que les respalde, ni tampoco con el apoyo del Estado, lo que vienen utilizando fundamentalmente es la protesta social. Allá donde tú ves un conflicto entre un pueblo indígena y una empresa, si investigas un poco vas a ver que ellos normalmente han utilizado la vía judicial, han dirigido petitorios a diversas autoridades, pero sin ningún resultado.
Over the next year, the community claimed there were many attempts by their leaders to start a meaningful dialogue with the company, but without success.
No más queremos abusos. Miren cómo es el poder del dinero. Pero aquí, si nos matan a los dirigentes, ustedes van a estar de pie.
On the 28th of July 2005, hundreds of locals walked for days over difficult terrain and in treacherous conditions towards the mine site for a pre-arranged meeting with government and company officials, where they hoped a dialogue would finally begin.
In July 2005, there was a march towards the mine by the communities, and when they arrived, and I think at that stage there were hundreds or thousands of them, they were met by tear gas and live ammunition fired by the Peruvian police, and allegedly, according to some witnesses, also by mine security.
Cuando ya en una bajadita, un zigzag, hay un cordón de policías. Eso, nosotros que intentábamos pasar, me cayó un impacto, pero no supe de qué.
There was a clash which lasted for about 30 minutes, in which 5 people were shot. One person died, one person lost an eye.
Conforme caminaba yo me cansaba. Cuando vino ya don Javier Neira, ya sin ojo, uy, Dios mío, me asusté. Esa fue la primera vista que tomé, pues.
And following that initial clash, 28 of the protesters were detained on the site for 2 to 3 days, hooded and handcuffed.
Ya pidieron sacos de plástico y nos pusieron en la cabeza hasta la cintura y nos amarraron con otra soga a la cintura para que no se zafe el saco.
They were beaten and humiliated. 2 women in the group were seriously sexually abused.
Nos golpeaban todos los días, nos golpeaban a cada rato, nos decían que nosotros vamos a ser las paganas por lo que estábamos ahí, que éramos unas perras, nos decían de todo, bien feo, nos decían que éramos terroristas. Y nosotros no podíamos decirles nada porque nos agarraban de los senos, nos retorcían, nos querían desbotonar nuestro pantalón y querían violarnos.
So these detentions on the mine site were alleged to have been perpetrated primarily by the Peruvian police, but there were also some suggestions that the mine security and the mine employees themselves had been involved. What was being alleged was that Monterrico, through employees, had either instigated or encouraged or facilitated the actions of the police, or alternatively failed to prevent them from occurring.
When the protesters who had been at the camp were finally released, they were charged with criminal offences, including terrorism and trespass. No charges were brought in Peru against the police or the mine security guards. It took 4 more years for photos of the abuses and tortures to surface when they were anonymously passed to a newspaper in Peru. The images made headline news around the world. With these photos as potential evidence, an NGO based in Peru, the Human Rights Coordinator, then contacted Lead A Solicitors, a law firm based in London, who started investigating the possibility of bringing a case against Monterrico on behalf of 32 claimants.
We obtained witness testimony confirming the role of one of the key directors of Monterrico in running the whole operation in Peru, including the security operation, which led us to conclude that there were good grounds for a claim against Monterrico on the basis of complicity in human rights violations.
Para mí sería lo máximo. Si hay la oportunidad y si Dios lo permite de que uno viaje hasta Inglaterra para declarar y dar uno su testimonio de lo que uno ha vivido en carne propia, estaría bien.
Ojalá se le castigue pues, a la empresa todos los errores que ha hecho, porque no es posible que una empresa venga pues, a matar gente. Y eso es lo que nosotros pedimos, y eso nosotros les exigimos también a nuestros abogados que luchen por eso.
Voy a llevar un testimonio de lo que ellos han estado haciendo en el Perú, de las perjudicaciones que la empresa ha estado pretendiendo hacer y lo ha hecho con nosotros. Estoy de acuerdo a ir, quizás para que sepan que nosotros nos hemos puesto de pie y no queremos que nos contaminen nuestra tierra altopiurana, que es una tierra muy hermosa.
At first, it seemed certain the case would go to court. In a statement in October 2009, Monterrico said it vigorously denied that any of its officers or employees were involved in any alleged abuses at the Rio Blanco exploration project site in 2005. It added that allegations made by the claimants were wholly without merit, and that the courts in the UK would reach the same view when the matter came to trial. But then, 3 months before the case was due to be heard, Monterrico's lawyers offered a monetary settlement, and controversially, it was accepted. Lee Day sent their representative to the region to explain the terms of settlement to the community.
Antes de que empezara el juicio, la minera se rindió. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que aceptó, bajo la presión de la corte, ya pagar la indemnización para que se cerrara el juicio, que se pagara la indemnización sin tener necesidad de ir a juicio.
No tenemos una justicia legal, una justicia que hable la verdad. Por eso, pero sí, tenemos justicia para acribillarnos a los humildes cuando uno los acusa por la verdad. Por eso es que...
Well, for multinational corporations, obviously, they much prefer to have an out-of-court settlement rather than going through to a full verdict, because it means they set the terms of the closure of a particular case. And for multinational corporations, obviously, the one thing they have in abundance is money. So they're perfectly happy to give a little bit of money, for them, peanuts really, in order to settle a case, rather than having to accept responsibility and to admit their guilt. And that's the key thing, that we're always being denied closure of a case in terms of its accountability.
In cases like these, when civil action is taken against multinational companies, they nearly always result in financial settlement. In this case, all the parties agreed not to disclose the amount of compensation received by the claimants.
Primary purpose of the case was to obtain compensation for the victims. So if there'd been a trial and the case had succeeded, that would have been the outcome, that the victims would have been awarded compensation. So it's quite usual that at some stage during litigation there will be discussions between the parties to see if some kind of compromise can be reached.
Obviously, for some of the plaintiffs, people particularly if they're coming from much poorer societies and they've got everything to lose in these cases, it may seem a very good option to take a settlement. It means that they're not thrown over to the vagaries of the justice systems. But ultimately it means that in the whole, the broader civil society doesn't get to closure of a case and they don't get to build on findings of accountability of the companies concerned.
The civil case against Monterrico was never about the future of the mine itself. It was about bringing financial compensation to the victims. However, the fact that only 32 people were compensated amongst a community of thousands brought division and bad feeling.
¿Qué mierda dijo que se dé la mina mejor? Así dijo usted, señor. Así que, señores, que sea...
La indemnización ha tenido un efecto negativo de ruptura de los lazos dentro de la comunidad, de deslegitimar a algunas de las víctimas que eran también líderes importantes de la resistencia y que ahora aparecen como traidores.
Porque muchas cosas están diciendo a mí, que ya me volteé a la mina, que he recibido plata, un montón de cosas. De una vez traiga la banca, señor secretario.
Han dicho que ya me pagaron, que ahora sí ya estaré de acuerdo con la mina, cuando no es así. Que ahora ya no defenderé, ya me cruzaré de brazos, cuando no es así.
Often, the problems affecting indigenous communities in the developing world that stand up to multinational corporations start when they are faced with a lack of options, forcing them into direct action. Sometimes this leads to violence, and often it goes unpunished by their own governments. In such cases, their only options for redress can be a civil lawsuit in a foreign country. But when these end in settlement, it brings financial compensation for wrongdoing, but doesn't provide the deterrent of publicity needed to ensure companies don't abuse human rights in the first place.
During the course of this litigation, Monterrico was put under intense scrutiny, both as a result of the documents that it had to disclose during the litigation process and by the media, and that had reputational consequences. In addition, there was a worldwide freezing injunction granted in this case, over £5 million of the company's assets, which was unprecedented.
The legal aid bill, which is currently going through the UK Parliament, will make it financially unviable for legal firms such as Lee Day to bring cases against multinationals on behalf of foreign claimants. Up till now, firms like Lee Day have not taken a cut of the compensation won for their claimants, instead making their money on a success fee they are able to charge to the defendant. The changes to UK law, however, will mean the success fees they charge will now have to come out of the claimant's compensation package, severely undermining the possibility of these cases being brought in the future.
If this bill is passed, it would be hard for us to contemplate doing a case like this Monterrico case. It would just be completely financially unviable.
Though the very possibility of bringing these cases is now under threat, it is still evident that the question of whether settlement advances corporate accountability is complex. On one hand, companies are not held responsible for their actions. Yet on the other, the practicalities and realities of the legal system mean that a settlement can be seen as a considerable victory. Yet the problem remains that settlement does not lead to the creation of a set of standards for businesses to adhere to.
Seeking out different opinions, if an accusation is made against a company, seeking responses from the company.
In 2011, the United Nations passed by consensus 3 guiding principles for business and human rights: the state duty to protect, the company's responsibility to respect, and access for remedy for victims. They have, however, come in for criticism for being non-binding and relying on the voluntarism of states and companies. It is clear there are advances being made in corporate accountability. However, many feel that these do not challenge the underlying imbalance in the relations of power between communities and large corporations. A community's strongest weapon remains its own capacity for direct action. Unfortunately, the consequences are often violence and abuse. After the case against Monterrico settled, Servando, Pedro and Cleofe all made the long journey to Lima to take part in a nationwide protest against the Peruvian government's prioritization of mining over the interests of local communities.
El agua se defiende, el pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Stronger mechanisms are needed to defend communities when they exercise their right to protest. However, if these conflicts are to be stopped before they happen, then perhaps more systematic changes are needed to ensure relations between corporations and communities are conducted on a level playing field.